Good morning, gardeners. So, as I promised, today I'm going to be doing a fruit tree orchard video for you guys. So I'm going to start with my peach tree. This is a peach called O. Henry. It's supposed to be really good, really sweet, juicy, fairly resistant to disease. It's got these long, slender leaves, typical of most peach trees. And when I got it, it was just, let's see, you can kind of tell where the hardwood, I mean, it was just this little stick with these little teeny branches, and all this is new growth, so probably about, I don't know, maybe 14 inches. This is doing really good. When I first planted it, it was kind of a lime green. It just wasn't a healthy green color. It was just kind of looked like it needs some nitrogen. So I've been putting some liquid fertilizer on it, and it's really, really greened up, and quite rapidly actually with this application. And I'll share with you what we're using for liquid fertilizer in a different video. And I've put some bark mulch, actually not bark mulch, wood chip. Put some wood chip down, and it's really responding well. It really retains the moisture. The tree overall looks better, happier, more healthy. So yeah, I'm really impressed with the whole wood chip thing. Okay, here next we have fig tree, and I went kind of nuts with the figs. I bought 7 figs this year because I found out how delicious fresh figs are. There's a lot of new growth at the bottom. Some people would say to cut that off, but I've watched some videos that said in the Pacific Northwest area we really only get the Breba harvest, which is the first harvest of the year, and then there's a lot of varieties of figs also put out a second main crop. So according to this video that I watched, they've had lots of success letting all the suckers grow, because figs grow, the Breba figs grow on last year's new growth. So the more new growth you have, this is a Desert King, by the way, which does really good in the Pacific Northwest. Excuse me. And jumping back into what I was saying, yeah, so the Breba crop grows on last year's new growth, so the more new growth you get, the more Breba crop you are likely to receive. So for our climate, this seems to be the best way to go. And then next we have a Fuji apple, and it is just doing really, really good. I'm really proud that this tree is finally taken off. I've got a funny story behind this tree. So I lived here a long time ago, I grew up on this property, but I've been off and on. And I bought this tree about 16 years ago and had it in a pot. It was a dwarf variety, and it was meant to stay in a pot on my patio. You know, it never did good in the pot, and I ended up moving away, and I left my potted trees here on the patio, and the next person that moved in he just really let them go. He didn't take care of them. They ended up, it almost ended up dying, and never bore fruit, never looked good, always was just struggling. And my dad said one day, he's like, you know, why don't you just plant that thing in the ground? You got this whole big backyard. So that's what I did. One day I dug a hole in the grass and planted this, and the first 2 years it really didn't respond to anything. It looked the same, didn't grow. It got a couple of buds on it, like fruit buds, and flowers. But then, wouldn't you know it, the one night that I didn't shut the gate, a deer came in and ate all the fruit spurs and all the flowers off, so I'd have got no fruit that year, which would have been the first year that I would have ever gotten fruit. So this is the first year that I've ever seen apples on it. What is this, like 17 years later, something like that? So yeah, 16, 17 roughly. And I've got these apples, there's 4 of them here. I've got them in a pantyhose because I want to protect them from any type of like moths or bugs, anything like that. I was a little concerned about this Fuji apple being so close to that scab apple that it was going to get the same disease, and it looks here like it might actually have an infection, but that's okay. I will spray it, and I've also noticed over here there seems to be a scabby spot right there on that apple, and just here and there in little not major, just little stuff. But the way I figure, this thing's a survivor. I don't think scab apple is going to really bother this thing all that much because it's been through so much and just came out of it all a winner. So there's the Fuji apple. This is an Asian pear. It's got some suckers growing up. I need to get up in the ladder and take those off. It's doing really, really good. I planted some mint and some strawberries down at the base. And as you can see, we got some little fruits developing here. And then periodically I'll come out here and pick the inferior ones off, and it's called culling or thinning, and it just puts the energy toward you know, the fruit that is going to develop good and stronger and better. Nice cluster here. There's another funny story about this big cherry tree. It's not really funny, it's actually kind of sad, but it is what it is, and I'll take it. So years ago my dad planted this tree, and it was a grafted tree, and what had ended up happening is it was just neglected, and the grafted portion died back, and then the rootstock came up, and the rootstock is not a fruit-bearing rootstock. So we had this big, beautiful cherry tree, and no cherries ever. So it's kind of a bummer, but I always try to look at the positive, and if anything, it's an awesome shade tree. So, and the 2 trees that you see right here and also back here, these are just ornamental trees. I'm not quite sure exactly what they are, but they get really, really pretty in the fall. And as you can see, even here it is in the middle of summer, and there's still some nice color that you would typically see in fall. It's got like a red tint to it. Alright, so a lot of you may not be familiar with this type of tree. It's called jujube. Oh, look. And it's a Black Sea jujube. And I've never grown one before. I've been really fascinated by them. I watch a lot of videos by a guy named Jake Mace, and he has a YouTube channel called The Vegan Athlete, and he's awesome. You guys really ought to check him out. I think he lives in Phoenix, Arizona, and he has a food forest rather, and he grows like over 100 different, I think it's like 150 different fruit-bearing trees and shrubs in his Phoenix backyard, and it's just amazing what this guy can do. He's just full of knowledge. Highly recommend checking out his YouTube channel. So anyways, from the way that I've seen these described, the fruit is kind of like smaller than, about this big, smaller than a regular apple, but it has kind of the crunch of an apple, and but it's sweeter than an apple, And then ideally what you want to do is let them dry a little bit and while on the plant, and they get like a date-like consistency. So they're also called the Chinese date. And I like to grow different exotic things, so why not, I figured. There's Jinx enjoying this Friday afternoon. Actually, it's not even afternoon, it's like 9:30 in the morning, so I'm up kind of early. So this is another fig. This one is called Corky's Honey Delight. And it's what you call a honey fig, and it's the only one like it that I have. And I'm really excited because I love figs and I love sweet figs. So this is not the Breba crop. Not the first crop. This is the main crop, which is the crop after the Breba crop. And from what I understand, these will not ripen in time in our area for us to be able to eat these. But we'll see. I'm hopeful. I'm not sure, but I'm hopeful that we'll get to try them at least a little bit. So yeah, there's a lot. There's about a dozen figs on this fig tree, and I got it in kind of subpar condition. I almost didn't buy it. I actually, well, the first time I looked at it, I passed it up, and a week later I ended up coming back to buy it. But I found it at Lowe's. It was all blown over with, like, there was a brick in the black pot that it was in because it was so dry. They just weren't taking care of it. They weren't watering it, so they would put a brick in the bucket so it wouldn't blow over in the wind because it was so dry. The leaves had kind of this, I don't know, just an icky edge on it. You can just tell it had been neglected. It was totally root bound, and I planted it here, and it did get some new growth. These leaves are new here. In fact, this whole little top section is new. So it is improving slowly. No major new growth though. So we'll see. All right, let's go this way. This next one is really unique. When I seen it, I had to get it. I needed a cross-pollinator to go with my plum tree that I have, and we'll get to that in a minute. And then I found this, and it said that it's a good pollinator, so for plums. So I figured, oh, this was perfect. Let's see, but it's a cross between a cherry and a plum, and I thought that was just so unique. So it's called a Nadia plum. It's a semi-dwarf. It's a plum and cherry hybrid. I've heard pretty good reviews with this, so I'm kind of excited to see how this works. And it was in kind of bad shape when I got it, not health-wise, but just the shape of it. I've had to prune it. I really should do some more pruning on it, but I'm just kind of waiting. And everything was really sticking straight up. So I've weighted these branches down. And as you can see, all it is a piece of nylon, which makes the best ties, by the way. The best ties. They expand, they're super soft, they're free. And then I just staked it down to the ground with like just a little hook. And then I did it on both sides, this branch as well. And then here, these two branches were way too upright, way too close together. So I just got a piece of this wood and you know, just used it kind of as a brace to push them apart a little bit. The tree is actually really responding. It's gotten a pretty decent shape. Before it was all just basically straight up. Lots of mulch around that tree too. My wood chip pile has really gone down, which is good because I started out with 10 yards and I probably have about, I would say about 2 yards left. Maybe 3, but I think that's probably about 2 yards. That's our big black bamboo. It's actually kind of a rare sought after bamboo, and it actually has black bamboo stalks. It's really cool, and it is sprouting in the lawn. I need to either cut those up or transplant them. All right, so next we'll head over to the fruit cocktail tree. And when I seen this, I just had to get it. I thought it was so cool that I had 6 different varieties on it. Of course, after I buy a new fruit tree, I go straight online and I get to know the characteristics of it and what people are saying about it, which is probably something I should do beforehand, but you just never know what you're going to run into when you're buying plants. I didn't even end up planning on buying trees this day, and I went with my car and I ended up stopped by the local McClendon's and ended up stuffing this tree and also a pineapple guava tree, and then another tree was already in my car. In fact, it was that one right there that we just looked at. So I had 3 trees in my little Mercury. So one of these days I will have a truck or an SUV again, so that'll be nice. But that aside, so this has 6 different varieties on it. It's got a frost peach, a Stella cherry, a Lapin cherry, hardy red nectarine, an Italian prune, and one more, Puget Gold apricot. Which I was going to get an apricot tree anyways, and the fact that this already had it on there was just an added bonus. But it's doing really good. It's gotten a lot of new growth. I've actually had to trim it I've had it in the ground now for about 3 weeks, and I've had to prune it probably once a week really, because it's got such vigorous growth. The only thing people are really saying negative about these is that 1 variety or 2 varieties on the tree grow more vigorously. So what that basically means is you just have to come out and prune that particular variety more often. So I don't really see it as a negative. I mean, if that was the only negative that happened, is that you gotta spend extra time pruning 1 portion or 2 portions of the tree, that's fine by me, because I actually love to prune and I love the shape of my trees. And so that really wasn't a drawback for me. It actually allows me to have more time with the tree, to inspect it, to touch it, to talk to it, to see how it's doing, make sure it's doing good. So I kind of seen that as a good thing. Okay, so now we're gonna come to the fig trio here. And I've planted some strawberries down at the base. There's some comfrey in the middle. And this guy's looking really healthy. This is a brown turkey fig. It's putting on some new growth. Looking really healthy. There's no weird brown edges, or there's just nothing that looks wrong about it. It's just perfectly healthy, and I just really love that. Alright, and next, this one is a Desert King as well. These do really, really good in our area once again, and so I figured I should probably go with what I know does good. Got a spider in there. And this one's doing really good too. It's got lots of new growth. I mean, it could be greener, but it'll get there. I mean, all these trees have been planted they're all less than 2 months planted in the ground. So, and we got some volunteer tomatoes, which look really, really good. They're super dark green. They just look really, really healthy. And I figure there's enough room here to have tomatoes as well, so I'm just letting them grow. And man, they're just looking so good. Especially this one. nice thick stalk, super green, no signs of any kind of disease. And another nice thing about these wood chips is there's no soil in them. So from what I understand, the diseases like blight and things like that, they live in the soil, and when it rains, it hits the soil and it splashes up on the lower leaves of the plant. And that's what causes your plants to get blight. And there's no soil here, so it's kind of like a barrier, a really good barrier. So we'll see. I'll be looking to see if these have any kind of disease on them. And if they don't, then I'll know for sure that these wood chips are responsible for not having any kind of disease, because all my other tomatoes that were planted with underneath the soil got blight. And have for every single year that I've been a gardener, as a matter of fact. But I keep on top of it, and it doesn't totally destroy my plants. So, all right, and this is a fig called Nevrella, and it was really, really tall. And I've heard that it's better to have bushy figs. So I ended up cutting it, and I tried propagating the top portion, but it just didn't work. This is what I ended up with, which basically is a stick, but that's fine because that's what I wanted, because it caused all the side branching. All this is new growth from this year, just within the last, I think I cut it, I don't know, a month and a half ago, maybe, yeah, about a month and a half ago. It was probably up, maybe up to here, but it was really lanky and it was spindly. There was only top growth on the very top, and that's not what I wanted. I need lots of side shoots so I can get that early Breba crop that does so well in our area. So I wasn't quite sure if it was going to make it, but it did. They're very hardy, I've found out. Another tomato plant. These strawberries here are called white. Well, they're white strawberries. I can't remember what the variety is, but they're actually white, or a very light pink, with kind of like a pineapple-y flavor to them. They're really good. So I figured I would expand them over into this area. You can never have, well, you can't have too many strawberries, trust me, but not too many white ones. All right, so this is one of the first trees that I planted. And this is a plum, but I can't remember what kind. Let's see. Oh, it's Methley. It's a Methley Chinese, or no, sorry, Japanese plum. And it's supposed to have really good flavor. It's greening up, it's doing good. Lots of new growth. I've actually headed the new growth back probably 3 different times since planting it. It's really vigorous grower, definitely a vigorous grower. Yeah, like this was the original cut that I made, and then this offshoot, and then I'll come and I'll head this back too. Looks like I missed this one, but I've done that pretty much on all of them. You can see my original cut here, hopefully. And then it caused this side shoot to come out, which I actually ended up heading back yesterday. So I just want these to be strong. I don't want the new growth to get too lanky, because I want it to be able to sustain fruit, hold it, you know, be able to be strong and hold the weight of the fruit. So I head the branches back, so more energy goes into strengthening the new growth instead of just growing for the sky constantly. Okay, so that's the Methley plum. This is a, I think it's a five-way combination cherry, or maybe there's 4 cherries. I can't remember. Uh-oh, looks like something going on with that leaf there. And I really don't know if ants is a good thing or a bad thing on the tree. It doesn't seem like they belong on a fruit tree, but hopefully they're not the ones doing the damage. But I do have something wrong with this tree. It's getting some spots on it. It's getting some holes. I've seen what's doing the damage of the holes. It's these little like worm looking things. So I sprayed it with some organic insecticide that I made myself. yeah, it's putting these little, you can see these little holes. You can see right through the leaf. And then there's this spot. I just haven't looked it up yet. I just figure, you know, after spraying it, hopefully it'll get better. If not, as long as the new growth is looking okay, which it is, I might be out of the woods. So anyways, yeah. So let's see how many varieties this thing has on it. Okay, so it looks like we have the Lapins cherry. This is the one I was excited about, a Bing cherry. This one is a Sam cherry, which I've actually never had. Never heard of that before. And let's see what else. So we got Bing, Lapin, Sam. Oh, here's the other one. So this sounds cool. Black Tartarian. I've never had that one either, so. This was kind of an expensive tree. This one was like almost 80 bucks at Home Depot, but I just had to have it. It was in decent shape. I always check all the grafts. I really should have pruned that right there, but I didn't have good enough loppers at the time. And but yeah, whenever you buy a tree that has multiple grafts on it, I check every single graft to make sure that you know, they're decent, because the last thing you want to do is buy a grafted tree and then have one of the grafts die, because then what's the point, right? I'm actually going to take this leaf off. So yeah, this is all new growth from this year. When I first cut it, that was the first cut, and then all this is within like, it's about 6, maybe 7 weeks. And really, these should be more like that. You want them more at an angle, kind of outwards, not straight up. So I might have to weight down some of these branches just to kind of get them going. All right. I think we have one more tree to go in the actual orchard. I do have another fig tree in the garden, which is actually bigger and better looking than any of my other trees. Fig trees, that is. But this is considered the orchard, and I wanted to do an orchard video. So this here is a persimmon. It's a Fuyu persimmon. And it was just this tiny little stick when I bought it, and it was like 20 bucks. I mean, I was like, wow, 20 bucks for this tiny little thing. But I love Fuyu persimmons, and I just wanted my own persimmon tree. Something's been eating on the leaves a little bit, but that's old damage. When I first planted it, it just stayed a lime green for just weeks. It was one of the first trees that I planted. And it's finally starting to green up, although it still needs some help. I don't know if they just naturally look that way or if they're supposed to be a deep dark green. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, so that's my persimmon tree. A bush, rather. And I also have a pineapple guava too, that's also in the garden, but that's in the garden and not the orchard. And I just want to kind of keep it out here. So yeah, I'll just kind of do a pan around.